What's happening, Nerd Squad, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. The world of comics is full of amazing individuals. I mean, all those powers, all that spandex, come on. Plus, nothing brings people closer than punching bad guys in the neck. Feelings are bound to float around. Love is in the gunpowder-filled air. And sometimes the relationships that follow are a little bit odd, to say the least. So without further ado, I'm Taylor McWaters, and here are the top 10 weirdest superhero couples. Let's do it. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Squirrel Girl and Wolverine. Dorian Green made her comic book debut in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8. See, back in the early 90s, she was born with these fantastic squirrel abilities, including a tail to complete the picture. In the New Avengers Volume 2, Issue 7, the two of them have a brief interaction that hints that they could have been romantically involved at one point. There's some tension in the air, that's for sure. They're talking about being professional and also how amazing they look too. That's already enough evidence in my mind, but to make things even more interesting, later on in Wolverine Volume 4, Issue 8, Dorian is seen in Wolverine's mindscape with Emma Frost, Mystique, Spiral, and Jewel. This was the sexual fantasies room, so, I mean, proof's in the pudding, guys. Number 9, Crystal and Quicksilver. In Fantastic Four, Issue 45, Johnny Storm met Crystal, sister of Medusa, and they hit it off naturally. Johnny thought she was straight out of a fairy tale, and once they showed each other their powers, well, love. Love comes next, of course. The Fantastic Four needed a replacement temporarily while Sue was recovering from having their first child, so this Inhuman, Crystal, was looking to fill that spot. So Johnny and Crystal dated after this, and Crystal was front cover by time Fantastic Four issue 81 rolled around. And then in Avengers 104, after a battle with a Sentinel, Quicksilver gets hurt. So Crystal brought him back to her homeworld to heal him, and while they were there, the two of them ended up kind of falling in love. Everything happens fast in Pietro's life. If I was Johnny, I'd have a few choice words for him, that's for sure. And before we continue on with this list of weird superhero couples, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us a lot, especially while we're working from home. Those thumbs up really add up and help us out. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now let's get right back into this list. Enough wasting time. Number 8, Toad and Husk. When Toad was amongst the lucky few to have kept their powers after the events of MJ, he didn't save the world one day at a time. Instead, he became a janitor at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. He kept the school clean, he kept the kids on track. And then when the Phoenix Force approached Earth, Quentin Quire fell from the sky and Toad leaped far and wide to catch him. This impressed Husk quite a bit. So she quit the school thinking Kitty would just fire her anyways, and then she joined the Hellfire Academy later on, and she kind of made Toad betray the school once they started clicking. She's a little aggressive in her ways, some would say. Relationships have their ups and downs, but this is just another level. Because at the end of this 5-part roller coaster of emotions, Paige didn't even remember the entire thing. Poor Paige. And also poor Toad. I mean, he's gripping that mop tighter and tighter every day. All 5 parts are really fun. This relationship is nuts. I'd love to have Toad come and clean my place, just hang out, keep me in line, you know, he'd be nice. Number 7. Thor and Jane Foster. When it comes to Norse mythology, Thor's wife is Lady Sif. Now in the comics, it's a bit more complicated than that. They were on and off for a while, and I feel like we're gonna get a love triangle in the MCU soon. I mean, it's confirmed that Lady Sif and Jane Foster are both returning in Thor: Love and Thunder. So this could lead to a little triangle of romance, who knows? In Journey into Mystery issue 102, Thor had fallen in love with Lady Sif, so much so that when Sif had been kidnapped by storm giants and ended up as a prisoner of Hela, Thor volunteered as tribute. He actually wanted to trade lives, and Hela was so impressed, she was like, you know what, I'm just gonna let you both go. That's love. I don't know what to do here. And then in Thor issue 236, Sif sacrificed her own life in order to save Jane's. See, Jane in the comics became Thor, but her cancer got worse every time she got mighty and used the powers of Thor. So maybe the reality gem in the MCU has caused some life-altering effects to Jane, and then Lady Sif can somehow be the only one to save her at the end of Thor: Love and Thunder. Wouldn't that be sad? That would be sad, actually. Yeah, that'd be kind of pretty sad. I say this is a weird couple because the MCU has treaded lightly around it. Why Jane is the love interest at all beats me. I mean, the long distance alone, that would be enough for me to be like, nope, bye. Number 6, Kitty Pryde and Colossus. When people say age is just a number, that's like a couple years we're talking about. Maybe you're in your late 20s, you meet somebody in their early 30s. It's not that far off, but it sounds far off. That's what we're talking about when we say age is just a number. When it comes to Marvel romances, the whole age thing is a little gross. It's kind of gross. When the first two met in X-Men issue 129, she's said to be like 13 years old. They're trying to recruit her to go to Professor X's school, and Colossus is like 18 at the time, or somewhere around 20. He's like an adult. Now, in the Days of Future Past storyline, beginning in X-Men issue 151, we see Kitty and Colossus married in that future. So that's nice. I think. It's nice to know that they really are head over heels for each other. It kind of helps, especially when it started with their first kiss during a space mission, and right before they kiss, Kitty even says, "Gee, I wish I was older," and Colossus is like, "So do I," and then proceeds to kiss her anyways. Number 5, Iron Man and Gamora. If you put 2008 Tony Stark in a room with Gamora, like pre-Pepper Potts, I guarantee you that guy would at least turn on the charm. The idea doesn't come out of nowhere though. I mean, Tony and Gamora, believe it or not, have hooked up before. So the panel starts with Gamora being all coy and cool. She says the line, "Well, you're gonna have to do much better out here." And Tony responds in his classic Tony Stark manner, "I can do better." And then it immediately cuts to Tony laying next to her in bed. They look like they just had the time of their lives. Tony's all tucked in the blanket. He looks shell-shocked. Gamora's pretty chill about it. She's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go back to the bar. See ya." And then Tony's like, "Cool, true." And then after she leaves, Tony lets out the slightest, "Ow." Yeah, you don't say. It's probably gonna be a painful one. Number 4, SpiderMan and Black Cat. Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy, one of the more interesting relationships in Peter's life. Well, rather, Spider-Man's life. And there's a difference here between the two. You'll see. So she entered comics back in 1979 with Amazing Spider-Man issue 194. Now, when she met Spider-Man, they were, of course, both in costume. She fell for him, his charm, his quips. She could tell that he was a kind soul, and she trusted him. It was turning into quite the romance between the two, and eventually Peter felt like the time was right and revealed his true self. He unmasked himself. And she had a tough time accepting the fact that he was just an average kid under the mask. Should have left the mask on, Pete. Rough. I mean, looks really don't matter, but when you're a superhero, it's probably different. This is taken to the next level in the Ultimate Comics. When Black Cat finds out that Spider-Man's just a kid, she literally throws up all over him. So sometimes it's better to keep things a mystery, I think. Number 3, Wolverine and Lynn's son. This next one happens in the 4-parter Wolverine Manifest Destiny. So when Wolverine was in Chinatown, San Francisco, he saved a woman named Lynn from the crime lord, the Black Dragon. Now she refers to him as her lover in issue 3. Things are cooking, nice. Now what Wolverine doesn't realize is that by successfully taking out the Black Dragon, which he did, Logan now has to take that spot. He becomes that role. So naturally he refused, but by refusing, that upset Lynn. To quit would be dishonorable to everybody. So while he was leaving, she stabbed him in the eye with a spear, warning him not to return. So when the X-Men relocated to San Francisco, he took a trip down memory lane and returned, but this time Lynn was not the same. "Lynn is dead, lover," she says. "You killed her a long time ago." And she goes on to explain how now she is the Black Dragon, Queen of the Triads, Empress of the Chinatown underworld. Wolverine took over as the new Black Dragon, and Lynn escaped through the sewers, holding the same spearhead. Number 2, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Of course I'm going to mention this couple on this list. From the Ultimate Universe, this is one of the weirder ones. In the 3rd issue of the Ultimates, the Wasp is like, "Man, those two sure do love each other, those siblings." And then Cap's like, "Well, of course they do. They're family. They're siblings." Even in the 1st issue, like way back in the original X-Men, Pietro tells Toad to stop chewing so loudly in front of his sister. They're close. But in the 3rd issue, the Wasp is like, dude, he loves her. Like, loves her. And then Captain America makes the same face that readers did at that point. Yeah, that's a weird one. Number 1, Wolverine and MJ. The Ultimate Universe has some interesting elements, as we've just heard. And after Ultimate Spider-Man issue 66, it got even more weird when Wolverine and Spider-Man switched bodies. Mesmero switched their bodies, so Peter was like, "Hey man, I really need you to go to school. We've seen these Freaky Friday change-up style movies before. The whole fun is pretending to be the other person and trying to blend in with their lives." That's where the comedy comes from, right? This sounds like a hilarious adventure ready to happen, but while Wolverine was in Peter's body, he at one point ended up kissing Mary Jane. And it's made out like he even wants to date her, like he wants to go further after the kiss. MJ told him that she wants to wait until they're older for that kind of thing though, so thankfully, nothing happened during this change up. But the kiss and the idea in the first place, yuck, you know? Yuck. I was gonna save Hulk Gang for number 1, but creepy Wolverine takes the cake. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have She-Hulk and Thor. With the Eternals trailer dropping recently, this first couple might not be too far off in the MCU. It might just happen. When the final host of the Dark Celestials attacked Earth, Jen Walters was near where Eson the Searcher made landfall, and it telepathically called out to Jen for help. Now the Celestial gave Jen more gamma radiation after that, so she was stronger than ever at this point. Now cut to issue 8, she's a full-on savage. She's literally in savage mode, not just how the kids say savage. It's literally, she's a savage Hulk at this point. And by issue 11, she was pretty involved with Thor. Now, it wasn't a great start to the relationship though, because Jen was actually fully convinced that Thor only desired her because of her newfound Hulk strength, and it wasn't actually Jen Walters that he was attracted to. Although he says otherwise, but it's a little sketchy. Number 9, Ultimate Hulk and his 39 girlfriends. The Ultimates are a pretty awesome time. In part 1 of this list, I mentioned Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch from the Ultimates, which was a little yuck, to say the least. The Ultimates are a little bit more risque, if you will. And in Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk, we see a side to the Hulk that's less angry and more, well, you probably can guess by the title that I said. Now it starts with Wolverine getting ripped into two. He has to crawl himself back together. It's absolutely brutal. So Nick Fury has sent Logan to eliminate the Hulk, and so far it wasn't going as planned. Clearly. After receiving a stool sample, Wolverine was able to track the Hulk down. Oh, and yes, he stitched himself back together. That happened first. Don't worry about that. So once Wolverine catches up to him in Tibet, he hears loud thumps. Now look, I know this technically isn't a couple, but it's too amazing to leave out, so of course I had to include this. Wolverine opens the door to this hidden temple, and behold, it's Hulk and his 39 girlfriends, maybe even more. I don't know, I kind of lost count, not gonna lie. It looks kind of cozy though. It's a nice atmosphere, it's good. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to give us a thumbs up on these videos, that would be great, because it really does help the studio out quite a bit, especially while we're still working from home. You all are the best. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get right back into this weird hookup list. Number 8, Wolverine and Amir. Wolverine has also been around the block too when it comes to hookups, okay? He's not getting out of this easy. Sometimes it's casual, like when Domino got involved with the Assassin's Guild and the Hand. She needed a way to get her mind off of these events, so friends with benefits with Wolverine sounded like the right thing to do, and it worked. They were both happy. It was great. But in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 48, the friends with benefits thing hits a new low for Logan. Literally, he starts hooking up with an Atlantean for like 10 issues. She even says for Logan not to think about them hooking up in any romantic way, because Atlanteans don't have the same hang-ups that humans do when it comes to physical intimacy. Nice. Okay. Logan says he wasn't really worried in the first place. He just happens to let out all his secrets because maybe, he just feels like lately he has to tell someone. That's all. Logan's just a bit lonely. It happens. I'm pretty sure Logan just has a thing for Atlanteans. Don't lie, Logan. Number 7, Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn. This one we couldn't leave out for part 2. I'm actually surprised that I didn't use it for part 1. Perhaps one of the more nightmare couples to hit the pages, the since past storyline begins in Amazing Spider-Man issue 509. And the main story is that Norman and Gwen, well, they had twins. It was revealed that before Gwen's death, the two of them had an affair. And the story is crazy. Spider-Man ends up fighting the twins, all the while he's having to deal with the fact that Gwen Stacy is dead. A lot of trauma in Spider-Man's pages. The amount of emotional baggage this poor kid must carry around. So Norman raised the kids, Gabriel and Sarah. And the thing is, they aged 3 times as fast as normal kids. So when I said Peter fought the kids, I didn't mean he's not going around boxing infants. No, these kids are older and they know how to fight. They're the masked vigilantes that actually attack Peter at the beginning when he's paying respects to Gwen in the first place. So he attacked him while he was visiting their mother. What a weird time. Apparently they were supposed to grow up to be this one big happy goblin family, which sounds like not a thing. That's not a thing. There's no such thing as a happy goblin family. So when Peter found this out, he was a little upset. Number 6, Black Panther and Monica Lynn. This one's pretty nuts. Okay, it just takes a turn out of nowhere. Oh my gosh, readers were just in shock with this one. So Monica Lynn first appeared in comics back in Avengers issue 73. She grew up in Georgia but moved to New York when she then met Black Panther and he saved her from the Sons of the Serpent. And in usual comic book fashion, they fell for each other and it was working out. It was actually a pretty good thing. It was great, so much so that Monica actually lived in Wakanda at one point. She was in the family. But then in Black Panther, Panther's Prey issue 4, he just calls off their engagement. Oh yeah, they were engaged, by the way. And then Black Panther's like, nope, no more. Just kidding. I don't know. I wasn't feeling it. No explanation, nothing. And then what makes this more even heartbreaking is that later on in Black Panther Volume 4, Issue 16, Monica is seen again. This time she's performing. She's a great singer, and just like Adele, she is singing her heart out to a full crowd in Washington, D.C. She's killing it. She reflects through her lyrics on the heartbreak and the fact that Black Panther is now marrying Storm. Knew there was a reason behind his actions. Turning tragedy into art. That's commitment right there, folks. Number 5, Ant-Man and Beetle. In Ant-Man Last Days issue 1, we catch up with Scott Lang, and he's at the club. He's just laying low. He's trying to get his dancing on. I don't know. He's trying to shake it off. He sees Beetle there, which is not good news because Beetle recently had fought Ant-Man back in New York. He's already in a bad mood. He said the club smelled like Axe body spray. He didn't want to be there in the first place. And now there's a villain there. He's like, all right, I gotta go report this to the authorities. Let's get this done. She thinks that he's stalking her at first, but it turns out they actually just live in the same neighborhood. So she explains to Scott that she's a rich, hot, half-Dominican girl with ties to organized crime, and this is where she goes to party, so it's not a surprise that she's there. You know, it's a hoot and holler in time when the dude in the background's yelling, "Flow Rida." That's how you know you're in a sick place. But she admits to Scott that she's attracted to the way that he fought back at Stark's place, you know, and she tried to kill Iron Man back when that happened. So they grab a drink and they chat about life and the Avengers and all that jazz, and then Scott reminds himself of something that Captain America told him. If you want to be an Avenger, you can't sleep with a supervillain. And the very next page, we can confirm that he did not follow that rule. Just a naked Scott Lang, just a dude with an APAC wearing an Ant-Man helmet. What a sight. What a sight to see. Number 4, Black Widow and Spider-Man. This one is, yeah, pretty weird. I'd say weird. In Marvel Team Up issue 82 titled No Way to Treat a Lady, the story begins with Nancy outside when a couple of punks try to steal her bag. Thankfully, Spider-Man comes in and saves the day. I mean, mostly. Nancy delivers the final blow, this time saving Spider-Man's back. So he sees the Black Widow suit in her bag, but she doesn't know what he's talking about. She doesn't think that she's Black Widow. She's convinced that she's this Nancy lady, although she very much is Black Widow. So Spider-Man offers her the suit in order to keep her warm, and then when she gets the outfit on, it of course fits perfectly. But again, this doesn't snap her out of it. She still believes that she's Nancy Rushman. And then in comes the S.H.I.E.L.D. strike force with plans to shoot Black Widow. Not good. So Spider-Man gets grazed by a bullet during all this madness. And just then there's a moment where Nancy's body acts by itself almost, like a reflex. She lunges towards the strike force member and takes them down with ease. Confused how she did so still. So they end up sticking together for a bit, and then in issue 84, Nancy decides that they're close enough and she goes in for the kiss. She likes him, but in Spider-Man's words, it was the wrong feelings in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I couldn't agree more. So in issue 85, her memory finally comes back to her, and after saving the day, Black Widow confesses to Peter that Nancy and him had something special, but she is in fact not Nancy. Close, Pete. Pretty close. Number 3, Winter Soldier and Black Widow. Around the time of the Cold War in the Soviet Union, Natalia trained Bucky Barnes in the Red Room alongside other students. She and Bucky hit it off. I mean, they had a lot in common. The whole Russian brainwashing, assassin skills, Natalia working for the KGB, the whole super soldier thing, they had a lot in common. It was dark stuff, but still stuff they had in common nonetheless. They were great for each other during this time. They made each other feel like they were more than just assassins. They found love, the true meaning of life. Then they get brainwashed, sent on a mission, break some necks, come back, forget about it all, and then fall in love again. It was a nice circle. So without knowing it, they both had quite the history in comics. And in the MCU as well, Natasha says a line to Bucky after he escapes in Civil War. She says, "The least you can do is recognize me." Now, is this her about getting shot from the brainwashed Buck earlier in Iran? Or perhaps will we see a flashback to her training days with Buck back in her solo flick? More Bucky, let's do it. Number 2, Captain America and Sharon Carter. If we're talking about relationships in the MCU, then perhaps one of the most weird ones to come out of it is Sharon and Steve. See, Captain America was in love with Peggy Carter since he was a little guy back in the war. And then years and years later, when he's an established Avenger, she's much older and they're still in love. Even until she passes away, they're still in love. And then the next movie, the dude's making out with Sharon at the airport, just like that. Even the actor who played Peggy, Haley Atwell, said at Comic-Con that she's not a fan of the new couple. She says, "I just feel like I wouldn't want to date my great aunt's guy. It just feels like it crosses an incestuous boundary, and Peggy just died." Yep, you couldn't have said it any better. In the comics, when Cap first went on a mission to take Batroc the Leaper down, Sharon was by his side and the two hit it off then. She's actually one of the first people to learn about his alter ego, fun fact. Cap is honestly insane in the MCU. I mean, Peggy and then Sharon, and then time travel again, and then Peggy again. The dude, like, just swipe left. There's so many fish in the sea, just swipe left. There's so many apps. Number 1, She-Hulk and Tony Stark. This one we can find in She-Hulk issue 17. It's pretty, she brings up a good point. So Tony at the time is a director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Jen Walters at this point was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it all started with a debriefing. Now, it might have been the most unprofessional debriefing of all time. There were no PowerPoints, there were no conference calls, there was nobody else really. It was just Tony saying that he wanted to talk to Jen alone. It's really unprofessional. Clay Quarterman's upset about this, but he's only upset because he feels like he should be the one in there if anybody. Just totally missing the point. The next few pages, it cuts to Jen and Tony in bed, just like earlier with AntMan and Beetle. Jen brings up a pretty good point here. She asks Tony that why when he sleeps around, everybody calls him a player and he's like Mr. Cool Dude with sunglasses, but when she sleeps around, she's called much worse things. She says it's a double standard, and honestly, I have to agree. But right before Tony can even respond, they're called to action when the ship is attacked. Kicking off the list at number 10, Tony and his suit. Okay, Tony and his crazy super suit are one unit. That's the whole point in the movie Iron Man 2. Tony was called to testify before the United States Senate Armed Services Committee, and Senator Stern demand that Stark hands over his armor for military use. Now, Tony responds saying that his suit and him are the same concept, and to give it over would be to turn himself over in a way, which is not gonna happen. It's part of him, right? So in Iron Man Volume 3, Issue 29, we see this part of him get a little bit weird. The suit became self-aware and it was jealous. They would have arguments like a real couple, and the suit wanted private time with Tony. It even said, it's like, hey, you wanna get the hell out of here or what's up? Like, imagine if your hoodie was like, hey, what do you say we get out of here? I don't know, this place is kind of crowded. The suit is obsessed with Tony, it's weird. So when Miss Fujikawa came by, the suit actually interrupted them. The suit didn't want them to talk or flirt or anything like that. He's like, sorry, hey, what? You should get out of here. Sorry, Tony, who is this? Let's get out of here. Now, of course, it ends in a cool Iron Man versus Iron Man type fight, but the tension between them was weird, and we kind of got this on screen, or we almost did, at least. In Iron Man 3, when Tony's suit woke him up and pushed Pepper off. That was weird. I was nervous that it was gonna be a this type scenario, but thankfully the whole movie was a mess, so it didn't really matter. Number 9, Scott Summers and Emma Frost. Cyclops loves the telepathic type, so this exact scenario could get him in quite the pickle. So after Emma became Scott's therapist, feelings came out, getting in someone's head, literally and all, ought to happen. So she used her telepathic powers to enter Scott's mind and help him get through past traumas. Like, I don't know, when Jean Grey was killed in the Dark Phoenix saga. Something like that, that kind of stuff. Scott as well had a rough go when it came to mind control. It was a dark time for everybody. So when Emma entered Scott's mind to heal him, they ended up getting a little bit too close and then hooked up in their minds. Does that count? That counts. That definitely counts. Scott technically had an affair. I'm gonna count it as an affair. An affair with the resurrected Jean Grey that was later killed again, but this time she was killed for real later on. You know what? Love is confusing at times. But it's not confusing. Giving this video a thumbs up because you guys are fans of the channel and you want to support us, and we do our best here. Even working from home, we still try and keep up with the videos. So thank you so much for being patient. We should be back in the studio so soon up here in Canada. But in the meantime, bless your souls. Let's continue on with this list. Hit that like button or subscribe, your pick. Let's continue. Number 8, Magneto and the Wasp. So in the original Secret Wars issue 3, one of the craziest parts is when Magneto and the Wasp had a one-night stand. We find this out and it's wild. The world's in ruins. She says Magneto's a great kisser. What's going on? So the whole thing is weird though. It's also really inappropriate. Let's talk about that. First of all, Janet doesn't really seem too into this idea, despite it being the only time to chase their desires. And then here's where things get even more messed up. Magneto was apparently drugged this whole time, so it was just a mess. It was revealed later from Jim Shooter, who wrote the series. He said Magneto was accidentally drugged, so he was extra lovey-dovey with Janet that night. Sure, we'll call it lovey-dovey. That's one word to say pushy and inappropriate. The entire thing's awkward and weird, but it feels like a good time to move on now, doesn't it? It sure does. Number 7, Nurse Annie and Havoc. So when a superhero gets injured, they gotta go to hospitals, just like the rest of us, okay? Sometimes bones break, your brains get rattled around, you forget stuff. It happens. They're only humans, kind of. Sure, they can fire lasers out of their face, but they need some TLC. And in Uncanny X-Men issue 411, Havoc gets some of that TLC from Nurse Annie. Things come to a turn when she finds out the secret identity of her patient. So while Scott comes to get his brother, the two of them are left to themselves. She starts listing off all these things that she wants from Alex and she starts crying. Like, they're close, no doubt about it, but the feelings aren't going both ways at this point. And then when Scott arrives, she backs off, even offering to continue to take care of him, but Scott reminds her that before the mind stuff, he was very much in love with somebody else. And then even still, Annie's like, well, he'll need a nurse. No, she's committed, and it kind of worked, low-key. The next issue is all about Annie moving to the Xavier Institute. Also, she straight up despises the mutants, although she's there to see one, and her son is half one. Huh? She doesn't even want to help. She just wants to be close to Havoc this whole time. To be fair, she doesn't really get a chance to help because everyone's lashing out, but that's superhero stuff. People get pissed. And her ex-boyfriend was also the worst because her son is a half mutant. So she's like, oh, that guy sucks. But also, I'm a racist towards mutants. So finally, things get insane when Havoc comes back from this coma and he leaves Polaris for Annie. He was engaged to Polaris and he's like, you know what? No, this nurse clearly is into me. She has the hots for me. Also, this nurse was kind of into Iceman as well during this whole thing. He left Polaris at the altar for this nurse who was kind of seeing Iceman. What a mess. Number 6, Professor X and Moira McTaggart. Okay, so as we saw in the X-Men movies, they're pretty lovey-dovey and they've got a cute little nerdy relationship going on. James McAvoy, Rose Byrne, great actors. I would watch them on screen, do anything, they're so fun. It was super enjoyable to watch them, but now in the movies, he makes her forget a bunch of stuff for good reason, right? It even adds to the dynamic in a fun way because he bumps into her and he's like, hey, nice to see you again. Meet you, what? But in the comics, they were really close. And in X-Men 117, they even got engaged. Yeah, a little bit further than we saw on screen. So Moira ended up leaving Xavier, and then 10 issues later, she's now talking to Joe McTaggart, and it's revealed that she has a son with him. So somehow it's a bit more wild of a relationship in the comics than on screen. Somehow it's a bit more weird of a relationship in the comics than on screen, and he was making her forget stuff. So somehow, even though he's like, hey, forget everything, somehow that's less weird than what's going on in the comics. Number 5, Dazzler and Longshot. Okay, buckle up, folks. This one's kind of tragic, actually, yeah. So Mojo World is an extra-dimensional and extra-temporal realm inhabited by the spineless ones, right? Now there's a ruler, of course, and his name is Mojo, and he produces movies, TV shows to keep their species, the spineless ones, entertained. Now Arise gave some of these civilians enhanced abilities, like Longshot, for example. He's now a superhero. Cool. So Longshot has quite the history, or future, rather, or past? This is where it gets weird. Because Mephisto, that old devil, he sent back Shatterstar in time to the Mojoverse. And then he was discovered and experimented on by Ares, who created Longshot from Shatterstar's DNA. So later on, Longshot met Dazzler, Allison Blair, on a mission, spent some time on Earth with the X-Men, had a baby, and that baby was Shatterstar. The couple's memories were wiped and the child was sent 100 years into the future to fix the timeline. Mojo's like the grandmaster here a little bit. He's like, oh, they know each other, how lovely. It's actually a nightmare. Let's move on before my brain turns off, because these time loops mess me up. Number 4, Angel and Psylock. Speaking of X-Men, this one is also tragic. Nice. Weird, but tragic still. Elizabeth Braddock and Warren Worthington III both became Horsemen of Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse. It was a pretty big deal when they turned into Horsemen of Apocalypse, but in the comics, they were much closer after this time. In X-Men Volume 2, Issue 29, Return to Hellfire, so Archangel comes to the rescue a couple times, so naturally there's feelings in the air. But this couple has had some messed up moments. I mean, for one, Warren broke up with Betsy because he saw her flirting with Thunderbird. Fully broken up, no conversation. He's like, no, I saw that. We're now not in a relationship anymore. That's worth it. That's what this is worth. Okay, and then during Uncanny X-Force, he became Archangel, heir to Apocalypse, but in the comics, Betsy had to kill him during this time. Then afterwards, he was reborn with amnesia, and Psylocke and Magneto would control this empty vessel of a man. So he was Angel, and then he was Archangel, and then he had to get killed by his lover, and then he came back to life, and then his lover possessed his body. Kind of. Possessed? That's a fair word for it. Number 3, Black Widow and Tony Stark. The Ultimates, home of the weird. Okay, here we go. Ultimates 3, Issue 1 opens with this shot. It's the Ultimates just hanging out in Tony's mansion, and there's a tape playing in the background. Is it Superman and Big Barda? No. Is it America's Funniest Home Videos? I sure wish. That tape was Iron Man and Black Widow, you know, working stuff out. Well, in the Ultimates 2, her and Iron Man dated and even got engaged, so it's not totally random, but it is all lies. That's right, it's all fake. Turns out Black Widow hadn't actually found love after all, rather she was trying to destroy the Avengers for the fall of the Soviet Union. Good old-fashioned revenge. She doesn't get too far because Hawkeye, you know, like a lot of times actually. But what a cruel way to get betrayed. I mean, love and then lies? Oh, horrible. Even Stark's butlers were watching the film like, damn. Number 2, Nightcrawler and his adopted sister. Yep, you heard me absolutely correctly. Okay. Nightcrawler and Jermaine Sardos. Imagine dating somebody and then finding out that they've actually been your adopted sister the whole time. What a twist! That's exactly what happened to Kurt Wagner. Poor Kurt. Well, not really. He kind of loved it. Let's talk about it. So Kurt grew up with Jermaine Sardos. He was adopted by her and her mother, and they of course became close, being new siblings and all. But then things get amazing. Okay, so Kurt started dating a woman named Amanda Sefton, and she turned out to be Jermaine in disguise. Hashtag surprise. Now, normally when you would find out something like this, you'd be a little thrown off, maybe even upset because there's lies, and also it's like a relationship with a sister and a relationship with not an adopted sister. It's different. Is this weird? This is weird, right? This is in a weird list. Part 3, this should have been in part 1. This is weird. I would assume Nightcrawler would be upset, but he's actually totally cool with it. He's like, hey, I'd be more demonstrative about it, but I don't want to set a bad example for Kitty Pryde, you know? And finally, number 1, Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. We'll finish with Avengers, the Children's Crusade mini-series, where we have the young Avengers looking for Wanda because, well, her son Wiccan, he started to experience reality-altering powers, so we wanted to check in with Mama Bird just to make sure everything was good, and also to make sure reality itself hasn't shifted or changed. So we found out that she was being held at Doom Castle, so after a quick rescue trip, he discovers her and Doom in matching colors. Interesting. Turns out she's planning on marrying Doctor Doom, and she doesn't remember her origin or anything like that. All she knows is that she's in love with Doctor Doom. So Wiccan tries the obvious. He's like, nope, you're the Scarlet Witch, you're married to Vision, you had 2 kids. Hi, let's snap out of this, shall we? She thought that the 2 kids were dead, but lo and behold, Wiccan is alive, and before we can even finish explaining what happened, Doom steps in to shut him up. It's a nightmare scenario that you gotta check out for yourself. The Avengers Children's Crusade issues 1 to 9, super fun. Tragic, fun, weird, comic books, that's what it's about.